Raise your hand if you like making money. Okay, now raise your hand if you like doing math. Woohoo! Yeah, math! Okay, well if you're not raising your hand for math, then don't worry, because I'm here to make the process of costing and pricing understandable. And I'm here to throw in my 2 cents. In this video series, together we're going to walk through the process of costing and then pricing out 2 desserts. In the first example, we're going to start with a batch of cookies. It's going to be a small batch, like the kind you would make at home. We're going to learn all the equations that go into the costing process. At the same time, we'll use my costing and pricing calculators, which will help do a lot of the math for us. That will be a kind of practice round to get us comfortable with the basics. In the second example, we're going to cost out a 6-inch wide carrot cake, which is a little more complicated because it involves multiple components. In that example, we're going to work with bulk size recipes, like the kind we use in commercial bakeries. Now, you don't have to use my spreadsheet system to cost out your goods. There are some fantastic products out there that completely automate the process for you. If that's going to work better for you, then go for it. My system involves a little more effort, but there is a great advantage to making the effort because it forces you to get in there and really examine your numbers hard. And it's in the examination process of costing that you gain the greatest rewards. It compels you to really think about your purchasing and production decisions. At the same time, you have no choice but to fully learn the fundamentals of costing, which gives you a much more solid command over the subject matter. And that's the kind of mental prowess that helps you manage your business wisely. It's kind of like knowing how to make real caramel from scratch as opposed to buying the pre-made stuff. The pre-made stuff is nice, it's easy, you don't have to wait for it to cook. It's not gonna boil over or set the alarm off or burn the bottom of the pot and do a black mess. But is it totally convenient to know how to cook caramel from scratch? Yes. It's so logical, you don't even need a recipe. And you know what else I like about cooking caramel? It's dangerous. How do I know the system works? Well, I first learned about it in culinary school in a class called Kitchen Management. Then I implemented it as a manager in a number of bakeries. When I worked as a pastry chef, this method saved my butt from underpricing cakes and wasting my time manufacturing products that weren't cost effective. When I worked as an R&D manager, I used this method to develop dessert items, some of which ended up in national distribution with heavy hitters like Costco. Because of how much it has done for my employers, and because of how much it has helped my career, I promise you that this method can also help you. But you gotta pay attention. You gotta keep your eye on the ball. Incidentally, this ball was signed by the slugger, David Ortiz. Here is an overview that will help prepare you for what's to come in this video series. Here's what we're going to be using. A calculator, a cooking conversion tool. I will give you a link to a free one. The Wicked Goodies cost and price calculators. I will show you how to use this in Microsoft Excel software, but you can also use Google Sheets, which is free and works the same as Excel. An analog or digital kitchen scale. Receipts from all your ingredient and packaging purchases, your recipes. In these lessons, we're going to do some math together, but it's not going to be complicated math. The math is quite basic. There will be some addition, some multiplication, and some division. As we work, we'll be doing 3 things differently than we normally do when making computations. Difference number 1, we'll be working with 3 points after the decimal. Normally, when it comes to money, we see only 2 points after the decimal. In product costing, we work with 3 points after the decimal because it helps us arrive at more accurate results. Difference number 2, we will round our costs up no matter what. Normally, when it comes to rounding numbers, we sometimes round up and we sometimes round down. For example, when we have a number like this, and we want to round it to 3 points after the decimal, we would normally round down, because in school we were taught that if this number is 4 or below, we're supposed to round down. But when it comes to product costing, we never round down. We always round up. We round up so as not to shave pennies off our cost of goods. We also round up because it helps account for the inevitable cost of inflation. We always want to try to give ourselves a little cushion when it comes to our expenses, because over time the cost of ingredients are very likely to rise. It's like when your kids are growing up, how you buy clothes that are a little bigger so they can wear them for a little longer as they grow into them. You know, because you're planning for the future. Well, you want to do the same thing for your food costs. So in this case, we're going to round up to 0.231. So you may notice that the costing and pricing calculators are also designed to round the numbers up no matter what. Difference number 3, we will be measuring ingredients primarily according to weight as opposed to volume. Let's back up and talk about weight and volume for a minute. Whenever we measure ingredients, we have two choices. We can measure according to volume, which is the amount of physical space the ingredient takes up, such as in cups or tablespoons, or we can measure according to the weight on a scale, such as in pounds, ounces, or grams. At home, we tend to measure by volume. In the bakery industry, we tend to measure by weight. There are 4 reasons why professional bakers find weight to be advantageous. For one, it's more accurate to measure by weight, especially when it comes to dry, clumpy ingredients like confectioner's sugar, or loose, fluffy ingredients like flour, which changes in volume depending on how well sifted it is. When we're making extra big recipes in a bakery setting, it's super important to be accurate because we can't afford to mess up the whole big batch. I have messed up my share of big batches, so I would know. Second, accuracy yields better consistency. In the bakery industry, it's very important that our recipes come out the same every time. That's one of the keys to customer satisfaction. Third, when we work with large-scale ingredients, it's faster to fill up a bucket until we hit a certain number on a scale versus measuring cup after cup of something. Fourth, it's easier to scale recipes up and down when we measure by weight. In bakeries, there are a few exceptions to this rule of measuring by weight. For instance, scant ingredients like spices and flavorings are sometimes easier to measure by volume. And when working with small-size recipes, it's more convenient to measure by cups and teaspoons with just about everything. But no matter what unit of measure we use in the process, we still need to convert just about everything over to weight when it comes to costing. Conversions are what trip most beginners up in the costing process, especially when it comes to American units of measure like cups and tablespoons. American conversions are just trickier than the European metric system, which is much more sensible. But what makes it most complicated is that there's no universal equation for converting dry and wet ingredients from volume to weight. Different ingredients have different densities, which means they don't convert the same. For instance, 1 cup of molasses has a 12.35 ounce weight, whereas 1 cup of water has an 8.345 ounce weight, versus 1 cup of vegetable oil, which has a 7.427 ounce weight. All of these liquids, when compared at the same volume, have a different weight. Luckily, there is a great online tool that's calibrated to convert all the most commonly used ingredients into practically every unit of measure. It's called convertme.com. I use this tool all the time. It has a drop-down menu where you can search for the ingredient you're seeking to convert. All the most basic ingredients are listed there. If you can't find the ingredient you're looking for, you can just go ahead and choose one that's similar in consistency and density, and that should be okay. So just to review, when it comes to costing and pricing, we will be in the habit of working with 3 points after the decimal, always rounding up, and working with weight as opposed to volume. Now that you know what to expect, allow me to introduce you to my friends COGS and margin. This is COGS, which is short for cost of goods. She's made up of 3 components: ingredients, packaging, and labor. Her job is to help you cover your base product costs. This is margin. She's a percentage. She makes sure all your prices include your cost of goods, your ancillary operating costs like rent, utilities, maintenance, insurance, and whatnot, and profit. Her job is to help you make money. She's wicked smart. In the food industry, all price setting is determined according to margin. The higher your overhead costs are, the higher your margin must be in order to cover these overhead costs. That's why a retail bakery's margin is higher than a home baker's margin. Then, when you get into large-scale manufacturing, you become so efficient that you can sell your products in bulk to stores or distributors that will resell your products. So your margin must go down in order to leave room for that third party to also make some profit. For the sake of keeping things simple, I've preloaded all the margins into the cost calculators for you, but you can toggle those numbers as you see fit. Whether your bakery is small or large, these calculators will work for you. The kit includes two kinds of spreadsheets. First, we have the Recipe Elements Cost Calculator. This is for all your commonly used components like frostings, fillings, doughs, and batters. It's better to cost these components out separately because then you have them on file and can reuse the information over and over again as you mix and match the components to make different products. For instance, you might have 5 cupcakes on your menu, each using the same vanilla cake down below, but a different topping above. Well, you only have to cost out the vanilla cake recipe element once for all of those products. The same goes for all the cupcakes that use chocolate cake, and so on and so forth. Second, we have the product calculator. This tackles the finished items in your product line, like finished cupcakes or decorated cakes or a container of brownies. This calculator automatically generates your cost of goods and recommends a whole array of pricing options based on the most common modes of sale for bakeries. Direct modes of sale are for instances when the product is sold by you directly to the consumer. Indirect modes of sale involve a third party, like a distributor or co-packer, which is a facility not owned or operated by you that manufactures the product for you. There are some neat components to these calculators. You can scale your recipes up or down, you can toggle your profit margins, you can even punch in a desired sale price to arrive at a target cost for your goods. For your convenience, some basic information such as labor costs has already been preloaded into the system, but you have the ability to customize these fields to match your own needs. Note that the fields are color-coded. Red and orange fields are locked because that's where the spreadsheet does the math for you. Blue and green fields are for your data entry. Green fields are for text. Blue fields are for numbers. Fields surrounded by yellow are required areas of entry. Fields not surrounded by yellow are optional or only applicable in some cases. For example, when it comes to sales and grocery tax, which may or may not be required in your area. Okay, that's the end of the introduction.